Hello everybody, we are here in Maya. I am the CGI nerd and we are going to be talking about randomizing values inside of Maya and assigning them to attributes today. So, I am going to start by actually opening up my chat so that way we can talk if there are any questions. So let me open that up really quick. CGI nerd. There we go. I have the chat open now in case anybody's here. Hey Clipmore, how are you this evening? Okay, so in order to randomize values, I need to be able to use the random module or library. So I need to do import random. Awesome, good to hear it, Clint. It is case sensitive, so make sure that it is all lowercase. And let me make this a little bit bigger so it's easier for you guys to read. And I'm going to make the output window bigger as well. There you go. So now we can call the module like we've done in previous lessons. We have the MC and it'd be Maya commands. In this case, we're doing random. We can do an as command as well. Right now, I'm just going to keep random. So we can do something like random.seed. And what this function does for us is allow us to set a even more random number. Typically, if you just use random straight out of the box, it will give you kind of a predetermined set of random numbers, or at least kind of not as random as what you would like. The seed value actually takes in consideration some other variables and also takes a look at the current time that you're running the code at, and it uses that timestamp to actually randomize the number even more. So that by itself, it just kind of sets a seed for it, but it doesn't give us anything to work with yet. So we can create a variable that we're going to hold a random number for. So I'm going to just call this variable var for right now. Actually, let's call it Clint, since Clint is in the chat. Is equal to random dot rand range. So rand range will give us the ability to do a random number between a predetermined set of numbers. So we can do something like 1 to 10. And now if we run this, we get the code running, but we don't see anything about a random number. That's because we need to print the value. Yeah, Clint, you. I try to add the variables for anybody in the chat, their names. If I need a variable, that's kind of where I steal the variable names from. So let's try to print Clint. So the first time I ran it, we get 9, and let's try running this over and over again. So each time I run it, you can see that it actually creates a new random number. I'm pushing the return key over and over again, and you can see it updating each time. Something that you'll notice that even though we have the number 10 here, it's not popping up into this random range of numbers that's being generated. It's creating the 1, but it's not going to the 10. So when you're working with rand range, it's working up to that number, but not including that number. So if you want to include that number, go up to 11, and then now we should see 10 pop up at some point. There we go. We have 110 that just popped up here. So that's kind of how you get the ability to get up to 10. You actually have to push it up to 11. So let's see if we can do something kind of cool with this. In the last lesson, we talked about loops, so I'll include a loop here to reinforce that, and we can create objects. So let's create a loop here. We got to create some variables, so we'll create, nobody else is in the chat yet, so we'll create I is equal to 0. We're going to just use that to iterate our numbers, and then we can say while I is less than or equal to 10, so it's going to do it 10 times. Oops, I put a semicolon. It should be a colon. There we go. Let's do, just so that we can test this, I equals I plus 1. And then we'll go down to the next line and we'll say print I. So let's just run these few lines of code to make sure that this is working properly. So here we can see it starts off with 1, and then it goes up to 11. So each time we run this loop here, the first time it starts off at 0, but then we immediately add 1 to it before it prints. So because we're doing that in the loop, it actually goes up to 11. So if we just do, instead of as long as 0 is less than or equal to, we can make as long as less than to 10. We should only get this running 10 times. There you go. So it goes 1 through 10. Now we can see if we can do something cool with this random number. Each time we want to randomize a number, so we can seed the random value once, and then after that the random number should be effective. So instead of putting it out in the global range outside of the while loop, we're going to add that random number into the loop so it actually does it multiple times. And then let's say now instead of I, we are going to print the variable Clint. So here we can see that it, actually let's get rid of this print here. Let's try it one more time. There we go. So it runs it 10 times, and each time it runs, it gives us a random number. Oh, that's good, Clint. I'm kind of cool that you're following along. I think it's actually really exciting. Do you have Maya on your computer? Are you actually following along on the computer itself? That would be cool. Because Maya is actually free. After I can go through this, I can actually show you where to get an educational license, kind of like a learning edition of Maya if you don't have Maya. Okay, so we have the object being created here with that variable of Clint. You're just watching? Okay. So here, let's say we wanted to create a piece of geometry. So let's do MC, which is the Maya commands, because we're saying that we're importing it as MC. Dot poly cube. So we'll create a cube. And let's set a name for it. Name will equal. There's nobody else in the chat yet, so I'll name it Bob. And then we will add I to it. The only thing with I right now, it's set as an integer, so we need to make sure that we change it to a string. And the way we do that is put str, and then in the argument, we put the I. So that way it actually converts it into a string, so that way it can combine it together with the word Bob. And actually, let me put it after it iterates the number, so that way it's doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rather than starting at 0. So I'm going to run this. We should have 10 cubes, but they're all going to be positioned exactly on top of each other right now. So we created 10 of them, and all 10 of them, if we go through and select, we can see that they're actually all on top of each other. We can move them out and see that we can space them apart. But we have 10 cubes now that we can actually change attributes for as we loop. So I'm clearing out the scene. And then now that I've cleared out the scene, we have a name here. We're going to be needing to access this a few times, so let's create this a variable. So I'm going to remove that really quick and create the variable here. I'm just going to say this is obj name is equal to that, and then I can use obj name here. So that way, as I every time it loops, it will create a new name for obj name, and then we only have to call obj name directly by name here. So now we want to reposition this. So I'm going to do a set attr. And we can choose any attribute for that object, and we have to first tell it what object that we want to move, which is going to be obj name. And we are going to add the attribute that we want to change, which is going to be translate x, so that way it's going to give us a random value for each x value. And then we can put a comma, and then whatever we want to change that value for. And since we have this random variable here called Clint, I am going to make sure it is using that random variable. So now, as it goes through the loop, it should go through and create a cube, and then we should be able to reposition that cube within a line and a random spot. So let's see if we run this, if this works properly. There we go. So we have a whole bunch of cubes that were created, and they were spaced out randomly. Let's try this one more time to see that it will actually give us different spacings. If we want to, we can actually make this a much larger number so that we can see it a little bit more. So let's go up to 50. So let me minimize this to make it easier to see. You can see there that it created those and it spaced it out with more space in between them so that we can see the random values. So that's kind of how we would generate, excuse me, random position of cubes if we're generating it together. But something that might be more useful is like if we had something in the scene already that was modeled and we spent a lot of time working on and we wanted to randomly space it out. Say we made a rock or something. I'm just going to use a shape here, but it could be any modeled object. If we wanted to grab that selection and then be able to duplicate it and randomly position it, that could be pretty useful. So basically what I would need to do is grab the selection. In order to do that, we're going to call a command mc.ls, which gets a list of the objects and we can tell it what we want to list. In this case, it's going to be SL, which is selection, and make that equal to true. And let's put this as a variable. The variable name, I'm just going to call it cell. Again, this could be anything we want. We don't have anybody else in the chat, so I'm just going to make up one right now, but it could be any variable name that we want. And then let's do a quick print so that we can see what that value of cell, which is just our selection, will return for us. So here we can see that it creates a list. It's a listed item. We only want this first part in the list. So in order to do that, we can do cell equals cell, and then in brackets put a 0. When we look at a listed item, if we have multiple items within a list, so let me make multiple items really quick so you can see. So we have multiple items selected here. If we, let me get rid of this line really quick and run these two lines. You can see that here we have multiple items within that same list, and it starts off with 0 with programming. It's going to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or however many you have. So if we grab this with a 0, that's going to get the first item in the list, so whatever item was selected first. And so we can use that as a variable. So if we were to run this here, let's see. Oh, because it gave me an error because I don't have anything selected. So I do need to make sure that I have something selected in order for this to work properly. There we go. So now when we print, we can see that it's just the name of the object and it's not listed at all. Cool. So now that we have done that, we can go in here and we can remove these two lines because we're going to actually use that object that we have selected rather than moving it or creating our own object. And then instead of object name, we're going to use cell, which we know is the object that is selected. So we're going to give a random position for that X value. And then the only other thing we need to do is make sure we delete or not delete, sorry. Duplicate the object, so each time it runs, it will actually duplicate whatever's selected, and in this case, it'll be that. Let's see if this works. Okay, so here we see that we only have one that was kind of duplicated and made into a different position, and then all the rest were left in that original position. So what we can do to fix that issue is make sure that we select the object every time we go. So I'm going to put cell, which is the variable name that we just created above. And we do need an object. So there we go. We have an object now. And we can run this and we can see that it randomly positions it now within that range. And we can run this multiple times. It's going to create more each time. But you can see that it randomly places it within the area that we've predetermined, which is right now 1 through 50. The random seed, we're only working in the script editor. We're not going to be looking at the channel box. The channel box I mean, it's giving us the values here. We can probably print that to see what the random seed is. So let's do val equals random seed. And when we run this, we can print val, and we can see the actual expression that it is setting up for us. Okay, right now it's none because it's getting the argument value, but we can actually add more arguments in there to make it even more random. But the random seed is basically just setting something up in the background where the random values are actually generated with the rand range and the range that we are predetermining here. But this is actually the final code right here, where when we run it, we have to have an object in the scene that we are selecting. And when we run it, we get the random positions generated along the x value between a value of 1 and 50. So Clint, for you were asking about Maya. Really quick before I end this video, let me show you that really quick. So if you go to Maya, or sorry, not Maya, students.autodesk.com, you can actually get to their website, and you have to create an account, but they actually have the free software, which is an educational license, so you can't use it for commercial reasonings at all, but you can actually download Maya right here. And then when you sign in, you can actually choose your version and your operating system. So that way you can download the version of Maya. So, yep, that's how you get a free software. They also have a whole bunch of other softwares. You can actually look at the whole list of softwares that they have here that are available for free. A lot of different types of design software. But again, it's a learning edition, so you can't use it commercially. That's the only thing. But it's a good resource to be able to learn a lot of what we're doing here inside of Maya. How big of a file is it? I think on my hard drive it took up like 2.5 or 3 gigs of hard drive space. So it installs it. You have to download an installer. The installer is pretty small, but it does require probably about 3 gigs of hard drive space. The download, Caleb says, is about 4 gigabytes, but bigger installed from memory. Yep, so it takes a bit of space. Alright, so that's what I got for this video today. Hopefully you guys found that helpful for randomizing values. We will see you guys in the next video. Have a good day. Bye.